Welcome, everybody, to the Indiana Basketball Weekly Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host for the Indiana Basketball Weekly Show, Mike Goodpaster. And right now, I would like to welcome in Ken Sterling. How you doing, Kent?
Well, you know what? I'm disappointed but not disillusioned, Mike, today. Indiana, they kind of got waxed last night, but I think it was one of those games, and you're going to have those games where things don't go your way and the effort just isn't there and the stars don't align to where you can compete on the road. I think that was kind of it.
So was this an effort thing, you think?
I don't think it was effort. I think that it was just like the ball didn't go in the bucket. And, I mean, the guards combined, the four guards, Devontae Green, and I'm sure we'll harp on Devontae a little bit, and rightly so. Al Durham, Armand Franklin, and the other guy. Who the hell am I missing? I'm missing one of these characters. They
Rob
combined.
Finney.
Yeah, Rob. Rob just couldn't finish at the bucket. These guys, they hit 3 of 26 from the field, and when you get that kind of guard play, and then you've got your bigs all in foul trouble from like the jump. Indiana put Penn State in the bonus with 11 minutes left in the first half. Like, you just can't win doing that when you're playing on the road. And then nobody's making shots and you turn it over 18 times. And it's kind of an off-pitch cacophony of a choir that they're not singing the same song. And what they are singing simultaneously just sounds like garbage.
Yeah, and 12 of Indiana's 18 turnovers came in the second half. In the first half, yeah. I don't think they played well either from what I saw of the game, but they were doing enough to stay in the game. But the second half, from about the 12 or 13-minute mark on, was horrible. And actually, if Penn State would have played well, this probably would have been like 94-40.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Indiana actually, I thought, defended relatively well, and especially in the first half. It was tied at 28, and I was talking to my wife, and I was like, geez, this feels like it ought to be a 15-point game in Penn State's favor. And sure enough, that's what the final outcome was. But somehow, some way through their defense, it was a little bit like that Rutgers game where Indiana didn't play well, but it managed to kind of stay in the game for a while and kept kind of kicking the can down the road. But in the end, you're right, those 12 turnovers in the second half, including some just mind-bogglingly stupid turnovers, just like grind your gears, right? Devontae Green throwing another ill-timed and poorly thrown lob, and then another one-arm entry pass vertically to the post with against a guy who's covered. And what do you got? I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster. And again, I don't know who's keeping the scorebook, but Devontae Green, I'm telling you, had more than 2 turnovers. I look at the final stats. I'm like, what the hell are these people? Who are they assigning the turnovers to, for God's sake?
Yeah, and you would think from looking at this, Indiana out-rebounded Penn State 44-38. Yeah. They held Penn State to only 24-64 shooting. Hell, Penn State was like 11 for 23 at the free throw line. And Indiana lost by 15 points. That makes absolutely no sense. And when we look at the defensive end, the thing that stands out to me is they only caused 7 turnovers.
Yeah. They didn't get in the passing lanes real well, but what they did a good job blocking out, I thought, against a really good offensive rebounding team in Penn State. I thought they got back on defense. I didn't see them lose their guys much. I don't think Penn State scored a ton in transition. I remember them getting out in front of a couple, but Indiana's got a team where if they don't hit shots, they're not going to beat people.
Yeah,
you got
to
to hit
free
shots.
Throw line. You only get 10 attempts.
And that, I think a lot of that had to do with the foul trouble that the bigs got into. Deron Davis, a veritable foul machine. Joey Brunk in foul trouble early. Trace Jackson Davis, foul trouble also, to the point where Demezy Anderson had to play extended minutes. Jerome Hunter wasn't a part of what was going on. Race Thompson didn't play. I guess Hunter's got an illness, or he was ill once they got to Penn State. They need all hands on deck because Demezy Anderson, God bless this guy, a really good shooter in high school, at least statistically. I didn't see him play much, but my God, like he threw up 1 3 last night. It hit nothing. He just looks lost.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, Kent. the easiest way to tell if IU won or not is look at the box score, and if Demezy Anderson played more than 4 minutes, they probably lost.
Yeah, that's one way
I
to
mean,
do it.
I don't like to be mean, and you've already scolded fans for being mean with, but it's just true. I mean, when I looked at this, Demezy played 16 minutes, and then you look at
Yeah.
the stat line: 0 for 3, 0 for 2. He had 4 defensive rebounds, a turnover, and a personal foul. That's not very productive.
No, and the one combination of guys that I've seen that operated pretty well together was Finney, Hunter, Franklin, Trace Jackson Davis, and Joey Bronk. That seemed, offensively that those guys kind of play in harmony, but we never see those guys together. We weren't going to see them together last night because Hunter wasn't going to play. But every other lineup, it seems like you've got somebody who's kind of pulling against their offense and not being a part of 5 guys kind of bound together to try to attack the basket. It's just an awkward fit among these guys. And what I'm really trying to caution myself against, because I'm one of these guys, I try to see the good. And so the good that I'm starting to try to see is that next year, when Devontae and Duran have graduated and moved on, and these guys all get a year older, and you bring in Anthony Leal and Trey Galloway and the kid from New Jersey, you're going to start to all of a sudden see this thing kind of coalesce, much in the same way that Penn State has this year. Penn State was 0-9 last year in the Big Ten at this point in the season. This year, they look like an NCAA tournament team. So I'm looking at Penn State. I'm looking at Indiana. I'm trying to figure out how Indiana goes from where it is to where it needs to be for next year. And that is just going to drive me nuts because that is dumbass thinking. And I'm smarter than that, but I'm starting to buy into my own internal conversation that's trying to generate a little bit of hope, because without hope, we're lost.
Well, see, this is the thing, though. I've grown up as a Bengals fan, and you grew up as Cubs fan. You should know that we're lost, Kent. I mean, number one, we're both way too old to be hoping for next year because we don't even know if we're going to be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Joey Brunk, 3 for 4 shooting, 6 points, 14 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, foul trouble. Penn State was just good at what they ran. I thought they were the tougher team. I thought they executed
Yeah, but how about
better.
this?
I thought they were better
Even if
coached.
he's in foul trouble the last 10 minutes, don't you just put him in and see what happens?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think that Archie kind of falls into that trap where it seems like the rotation is set before the game ever starts, and there are very few adjustments within the game with that rotation. Like last night, all I got to do, and this again goes back to watching Indiana under Bob Knight for 20 years. You see that a bad act is answered with a consequence. But that doesn't happen here. Like Devontae Green throws up a lob, and tell me the last time a lob from Devontae Green was a good thing for Indiana. Immediately, I would take that guy out, put his ass on the bench, and say, what in the hell are you thinking? Don't do that again. If you do it again, I'm going to put you here for a long time. It doesn't seem that there's any kind of consequence in game. I understand that it might exist in practice. It might exist as they go over video. But in game, there's nothing to discourage idiocy.
How about this, though, Kent? The problem is, when you look at the guard play last night, you'd have to sit them all. You wouldn't have any guards left because it was horrible. I mean, Fennessy 0 for 6, Durham 1 for 7. I mean, Demezy 0 for the last 2 years. Deron Davis, he's not a guard. Ramon Franklin 0 for 3. Devontae Green 2 for 10. So basically what I see here is you'd have to sit all the guards because they were all atrocious.
I get it, but I don't penalize guys for bad shot or for missed shots out of the flow of the offense. That's fine. If you take a shot and it doesn't go in, hey, and you're throwing it up. You thought you could make it. I get it. Like Victor Oladipo last night for the Pacers, 0 for 6 shooting threes. From 28 feet with 9 seconds left, he buries a 3 to force overtime against the Bulls.
Wait a second, Kent.
Yeah.
Victor Oladipo has a reason to believe they're all going in. I think the problem with Indiana shooters is even in the flow of the offense, I don't think they really think that it's going in.
It seems to be contagious with them. Absolutely. That once one goes in, they kind of believe that more are going to go in. But somebody's got to shoot the damn ball. Those guys went 3 of 23. They missed shots. It's the crazy turnovers that are entirely foreseeable, to the point where when it's in live action, you're yelling no, 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 no before the guy even commits to making the pass. Of course, the guy makes the pass. There's a turnover, and it's going the other way for a deuce. That just drives me nuts.
Sometimes I scream no right as they inbound it on the baseline and start to bring it across the court, because I don't think anything good's going to come from it. Now, the issue you now have is you've lost 2 in a row after a big win over Michigan State. I don't think they necessarily played well against Nebraska. So when I look at this, they played well against Michigan State. I think they played a good half against Maryland. But outside of that, I mean, Rutgers, they didn't play well. Nebraska, I don't really think they played well. Penn State, they didn't play well. I'm having a hard time with the glass being half full here, other than the fact that Ohio State, they handled before. And right now, they're at 15-6. They're 7th in the Big Ten. And this is getting to the point where they need to win a road game. Or if you just go through and win all your home games, I don't know if that's enough to get in.
Last night's loss is the negatives of that are exacerbated by the previous loss against Maryland. You've got to be able to close that game. If you close that game, then this loss puts you at 6-4 in the Big Ten. You still feel pretty good about where you are. But because they couldn't close the door after they had a 6-point lead with less than a minute and a half left, that in conjunction with this bad game, it really does put you kind of behind the 8 ball. And now you got to close the season 5-5 and this is what people are saying. I haven't, independently corroborated this. They have the toughest remaining schedule in college basketball in these last 10 games. And that is going to be problematic as they try to cobble together 5-5 against those teams. It's really going to be tough. You might have to sweep against Purdue, and I'm telling you, it's going to be unpleasant up there at Mackey Arena. I think maybe you've got a good chance to win the last 2. So the next 8, you've got to win 3, I think. And I'm doing that kooky, hopeful math that just doesn't make any sense.
See, I still
my
think
only
you need a road
disagreement
win.
with you.
You need road wins, though.
Well, good luck with that.
Because, really, the tournament committee is going to look at that. If you're sitting there, hell, if I was sitting here right now, and I wasn't just going on who was playing better right now because I'm not really sure. If Ohio State was to be put up against Indiana and you looked at the resumes, Ohio State's beaten Villanova. They beat North Carolina at North Carolina. I know that's not normal North Carolina, but it's still North Carolina. They blew out Penn State. They've got a win against Kentucky. They lost a close game to West Virginia. Indiana needs to win this game.
Yeah, they do need to win this game. And they need to find their way to 5. Whatever those 5 are is fine. The only thing, going back to what you said previous, if you went on the road, I think you count that as a quality win. And while it might not have been aesthetically pleasing, I think playing well enough on the road at Nebraska, you kind of put a check mark there. And so I'm not going to criticize them for their level of play during a road win. But they do need to win. They've got Ohio State, they've got Purdue on the road, they've got Illinois on the road, they've got a trip to Michigan, and I'm missing another one. I at least one.
Let me pull the schedule up here.
You probably are you going to be able to run the table at home? They've got a game against Iowa, but I think that's at Assembly Hall. That's going to be a tough win too.
All right.
So
when we look at this, they're going to go to Ohio State. They play Purdue. That's winnable. Iowa is better than Indiana, just flat out. It's not half full, half whatever. They got a big man underneath that can pound, that can play ball. He's the ugliest man I've ever seen. And then they got a bunch of guards that can shoot the ball. You go to Michigan, which I think is a very winnable game. That's a road win. Minnesota, for a really good team like a Michigan State, that's probably a better than 50-50 shot to win. With IU, not so much. Penn State here, that's still a tough game. At Purdue, at Illinois. Illinois is one of the top 2 or 3 teams in this league right now. You get Minnesota and Wisconsin at home. But the scary part there is both of those teams are good enough. The way IU doesn't play consistently, you could easily split that. You lose at Purdue, you lose at Illinois. If you lose at Minnesota, you beat Michigan, Penn State. I mean, I could see a way to get it, but I think that those 5 wins almost has to include winning the game at Ohio State and winning the game at home against Purdue.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you're right. Winning at the barn is very tough. And then beating Iowa at Simon Scott Assembly Hall, because Garza plays harder than anybody Indiana has. And so when your best player, and he's their best player, is the hardest working guy on the floor, if he's going to outwork the entire opposition, you got a hell of a chance to win on the road. And I think that's what Iowa is. They're as good as Garza is going to play hard. And all I've seen from him this year is him playing really, really hard. I think their only hope in that game is to find a way to pound it down low and get the guy in foul trouble at some point. If you can get him to pick up 2 early fouls, then maybe you've got the rest of the first half to go score. But other than that, that's going to be a really, really tough game. It seems like that Maryland game, man, that's the one that you're going to point back to and you're going to say, damn, if we had just taking care of our business the last 90 seconds, we're in a completely different situation, and they're going to regret that one. And they don't realize it. They don't think that way. Like Devontae Green, and it was, midway through the second half against Maryland, he tosses away a possession by throwing a bad lob. That's how you lose these games. It's not necessarily the Jerome Hunter turnover or missed shots, one of them by Devontae Green in the last 90 seconds. It's what you did with 8 minutes left or 12 minutes left that put you in a position that those plays, the importance of those plays at the end, are magnified, and they just don't understand that kind of math, that 2 counts exactly the same with 10 minutes left as it does with 30 seconds left.
Yeah, and I think with Iowa, what you've seen is Iowa really played that way until about the last 6 games. They were kind of all over the place, too. They lost at home to Penn State. They lost at Nebraska. But from then on, they blew out Maryland. They blew out Northwestern at Northwestern. They handled Michigan at home. They handled Rutgers at home. They handled Wisconsin. They're going to play at Maryland tonight, which is, I think, going to tell us a lot about the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Yeah, I do too. And Iowa's one of those teams that could find its way to the championship of the Big Ten. Illinois, another one. Obviously, Michigan State. The Big Ten's so cockamamie this year. I don't think any game is guaranteed really to anyone unless you're playing against Northwestern or Nebraska. In our minds, we can cobble together methods. I mean, really, these 2 games against Purdue can't score. No. Indiana can't score, but Purdue can't score either. They don't shoot great from the outside. They don't bang it down low often enough, I don't think, to Trevion Williams. Harms has been a disappointment this year. There's a lot going on with Purdue that gives you hope that you could sweep those 2 games. But at the same time, who the hell's Indiana to project itself to win 2 games like that against Purdue?
Well, and the other thing about Purdue you got to remember is this, though. They're going to be desperate because right now Purdue's in a situation where they got to figure out how to win more than 5 games in the Big Ten to get to the tournament, I think, because they're sitting, right at about 500.
They're 4-6 and 11-10 overall. So if they just go 500 from here on out and they split games at the Big Ten tournament, they're going to finish a game over 500. Or a couple of games over 500. That's exactly right. You're not going to be, 17-15 or 18-16 and likely go to the NCAA. Although now the metrics have kind of changed with selections, and it's got nothing to do with the last 10 games of the season, and all the games count the same, and so the metrics have changed a little bit. But I don't know that necessarily helps Purdue.
No, I still think it's going to be tough to get in at 16-15 or 17-15 either way.
Yeah, and that's where Indiana was at the last couple of years. And so it looks like Indiana's going to put itself in a position where they need a couple of wins minimum at the Big Ten tournament. And we know how that's gone historically. I mean, that's just been what a train wreck that event's been for Indiana. We keep paying, I think, the karma that Bob Knight unleashed in his hatred for the Big Ten tournament. I think just keeps coming back to bite us in the ass somehow. I don't know how otherwise that's explainable.
I could explain it by the fact that Indiana, since the Big Ten tournament started, hasn't really been that good.
Yeah, well, there's that.
I mean, you know what? They say karma's a bitch, but not being very good, that's really a bitch.
But even years when they were good, when they were the regular season champs, that didn't bode terribly well. 2012 wasn't very good. They had the 1 year when they went to the championship and Luke Recker beat their ass, with Iowa. They had a chance with Dan as the head coach, and that kid, that bastard from Minnesota, hit that stupid-ass shot. I'm still pissed off about it.
Yeah, but remember this also. If you want to win in tournaments, usually coaching is a big deal here, and we weren't rolling. We were rolling with Tom Crean in a lot of these. And Kelvin Sampson and Mike Davis and whoever else.
Yeah.
I won't blame Dan. They only gave him part of a season.
And he had to clean things up immediately while coaching that group of people. And he'll tell you that Urban Meyer told him, don't worry about any of the behavioral crap, just win. You can clean that up later, but Dan tried to clean it up, and to his credit.
I've heard enough about Urban Meyer to know exactly that he would say that.
Well, that's from Dan. So, that's Dan. That's one of his. I don't think he regrets it, but it's one of those moments where if he could kind of go back and unring the bell, he thinks that he might do it. But in the end, Dan is a good person who holds people accountable, and that's what he did for that team. They didn't want to be held accountable, and they kind of, they didn't run through a wall for him. They ran into the wall for him.
Yeah, but don't you think it's possible that even if he would have done that in one game, that they still would have replaced him just because of the night connection?
They might have. Greenspan knew that he was a short timer at that point, so I don't know exactly how that would have worked with Greenspan. I don't think Adam Herbert would have been, and I think he was still the president at that time. I don't know what kind of a fan of Dan's he was. I think Dan would have been a terrific coach, and he would have got that thing headed in the right direction. And I think it would have happened more quickly under Dan than it did under Tom.
Yeah, I don't know if he would have or not, but I think that there was a better chance that Dan Dockich was going to fix it than there was Tom Crean.
Yeah, and fix it in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
The Indiana culture would have returned, and it would be back to being what Indiana, for better or worse, however you view that.
Well, it's for better if he can coach.
Indiana being Indiana.
Yeah, it's for better if he can coach, and it doesn't matter if he can't. So I don't know if he could have or not. I would have liked to seen him get the chance as opposed to the people they gave the chance to. Tom Crean.
I do too. I do too. I think that was there's always been this sense at Indiana that Indiana people aren't good enough for it. So they go outside the university to hire people. Often, whether it's the AD, and they didn't do it with Fred, which is terrific because Fred, although not within that IU system, still an Indiana graduate and an Indiana guy. But Greenspan, you had McNeely, you had these guys. And then from a basketball sense, to me, Mike Davis wasn't an Indiana guy. Kelvin Sampson certainly wasn't. Tom Crean wasn't. And so you wind up with and this goes to presidents. The current president is not an IU guy. I like seeing a university or any entity, whether it's business or a university, kind of promote from within and prepare guys for those. So you wind up being a program and a university like Wisconsin. Like that just keeps rolling. It rolled from Bennett to Ryan and now to guard. And although there's been a hiccup with guard, at least it's still Wisconsin. And Indiana under Crean and under Sampson became something different entirely.
Yeah, and I do like the next day after IU plays poorly to listen to all the intelligent fans. There was one today that sent me a message on Twitter, and he's like, I don't even think that Archie Miller, and I did, in my mind, this is the way he talked while he sat in his underwear in his mom's basement. But he's like, I can tell you this, I don't even think Archie Miller could coach a junior high team.
Oh, yeah.
So
I always get the guy.
Back. Yeah, he can't coach a junior high team, but he did get Dayton to the Elite Eight.
I get this guy, and I finally blocked him, I think, this morning. where he would say, Indiana's problem is they don't have any Division I basketball players. And I think, okay, this guy's just a moron. And I hate blocking people because it gives them some kind of satisfaction that they drove somebody nuts. But I just can't take it anymore from this idiot. So I did block him. I would really like to see Twitter disable the direct message function. I do not like direct messages. The direct messages that I get from people are really angry and unpleasant. And that's been especially true this week, where it's like, really, you got to spend your time telling me to do that? First of all, it's impossible. Second of all, what's the matter with you? So I wish that DMs just went away.
I like them. I like confrontations. I do. I like calling people stupid. I've never blocked anybody in my life for anything. They can knock on my door with a gun, and I would try to shoot them before I would block them.
See, that's where I normally am at. But this guy finally, I was like, look, he's just trying to get a rise. I got to take control of my social media life. I can't be bothered by these idiots. There's a guy in Indianapolis TV here who does a show, a complete dunderhead, who just continues to, in ignorance, attack me for the most idiotic things. Like, there's plenty of stuff that you can attack me for. I'm wrong fairly regularly. But this guy attacks out of such ignorance, and it's not a sports guy. It's like a daytime host type guy.
You let me know his name, and I'll attack him for you, because I love that shit.
Oh, geez. Well, it's just like, after a while, it's like, oh my God, is this guy drinking heavily? What is the matter with his thought process where he just keeps coming and coming and coming and coming and coming? I said a thing, and this was in response to a radio station being canceled here by iHeart, a sports talk station. I like local. So I said, bad local beats great national every time. And this guy just won't let it go and thinks it's the most idiotic thing that he's ever heard while he's hosting a local TV show against national
Well, he knows
shows.
He's not that good, probably, then.
Good Lord. But it's kind of like, look, I know about maybe 4 things in my life, and one of them is media. Like, I worked in media for a long time in management, and there's some things that I understand at a level where people ought to just sit back, listen, and thank me for sharing what I've got to say. This guy just keeps coming back with these idiotic harpoons that drive me bats.
Right. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up now, Ken. Does
All right, brother.
Play Saturday or Sunday?
They play Saturday.
What time?
That's a great question. It may be 2:00. It may be 1:00. I can't remember when they play at Ohio State, but almost nobody plays on Sunday because it's Super Bowl Sunday, and that oddly nobody cares. At least, I don't. I'm big into caring about the Super Bowl. This year, completely different.
Well, it's because we don't know what's happening because there's a lot of Kobe Bryant news instead of
That's
Super Bowl
exactly
news.
Right. And I think, honestly, there are a lot of people still trying to process how, that loss makes any sense. And so I think that's drawing bandwidth away from a lot of sports fans. And I think as a result, this Super Bowl has a chance to be, I don't know, maybe it'll wind up being the most watched ever. But it sure doesn't feel, I don't feel that kind of vibe here in Indianapolis at all.
Yeah, problem is in Indianapolis and Cincinnati, we don't have NFL teams anymore. But, all right, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. You want to go Saturday after the game then?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, guys, make sure you read Kent Sterling's book, Oops, which you can find where, Kent?
That is at Amazon. You just search Kent Sterling and up will pop the yellow and red cover. Get the audiobook. You know what? The audiobook's fun. It's 6 hours and 40 minutes of me telling stories about how damn stupid I am. Nothing could be more entertaining.
All right. And you can follow Kent on the old Twitter sphere. Where at, Kent?
Yeah, at Kent Sterling. And please send me unsolicited direct messages. I enjoy them so.
All right. So make sure you send Kent. Well, see, this is the thing, though. I don't think somebody can send you a direct message unless you're following each other, can they?
No, they can. And it shows up as a DM request.
Ah.
And I always accept them.
Well, quit accepting them. This is your fault. Oops.
I'm the captain of my own sinking ship.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to wrap it up. And if Kent's ship doesn't sink all the way to the bottom and he drowns, we'll be back Saturday afternoon and talk about Indiana destroying Ohio State on their way to the NCAA Final Four. But for now, he's Kent Sterling. I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.